All righty, we are going live with Randy Hillier in just a second here.
No freedom! No freedom! Freedom! No more lockdown! No freedom! Freedom!
How do I remove this? This is a clip from Kemptville, Ontario, during the lockdowns, no more lockdowns. And we're going to hear from Randy just in a second. Look at those suspenders. Amazing. Moon Shippeth says 4 years later, no one held accountable. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. All right. The Roaring Lion. Amazing. Okay. Now, how do we get rid of this? How do we stop this clip? What the hell? Jeez Louise. Is this thing glitching or what?
No freedom!
Oh my gosh.
No freedom!
Maybe that's it.
Freedom! No more lockdown! No freedom!
What's going on here? Why can't I take this down? Oh my gosh. There we go. Hey, here we are.
Technology.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's get her started. I couldn't stop the clip from playing. That's kind of embarrassing. But how's everyone doing tonight? Randy, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine, and great to see you again, Greg.
Of course. And for people who don't know the context of that clip, you said it was in Kemptville. This is what? I'm guessing 2021 when this happened?
Yeah, this was at the height of the lockdowns. This is where there was no allowance for anyone to be gathering outside for any reason other than the prescribed, healthcare or groceries or LCBO. Mm-hmm. But, there was various thresholds over the lockdowns. Sometimes 5 people were allowed to get together, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. That was when there was 0 allowed. And that was one of the cases that we won in the constitutional challenge that I had. The 25 different charges against me for disobeying the lockdowns. That was one of the key ones that we won in court on.
So that video was played in court?
No, because we won the constitutional challenge.
All right.
The charges were stayed.
So you didn't even go to trial.
Not on those ones. I've got enough other enough other trials. So,
and unfortunately, everybody in that video is now dead because they weren't wearing a mask. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
They are all alive and well, and they still call and chat and comment about what a marvelous day it was at the bistro.
Yes.
I don't think the public health and the OPP were so thinking it was so marvelous, but all the other patrons drinking beer and enjoying a nice spring evening in Kempville.
Yeah. And tonight we're going to get into the kind of latest with your never-ending story, your never-ending charges since the convoy. We'll kind of get into the details, the weeds on that. We'll talk a little bit about Bill C-9. We'll talk a little bit about World War III, that kind of fun stuff. But I wanted to go back to that clip real quick because it reminds me of another viral convoy clip or, COVID era clip, which is when the sort of guilty anti-masker, anti-vaxxer was able to get the police to fuck off, basically. Part of my language. But they were able to get the police to go away. The other clip was Artur Pawlowski, if you remember, when there's that viral clip of a whole bunch of, at least a half dozen to a dozen police officers coming in with their mask. And he's just like, get out, screaming. But it is cool to see that when the will of the people, the kind of lion's roar of the righteousness.
We had a few of those. Yeah. Oh, we had a few of those. Peterborough was another big example of that, where but we had quite a number of instances where the audience and the participants practice what I believe is the finest art and most noble undertaking of a citizen of a country, and that is peaceful, nonviolent civil disobedience when government imposes wrongdoings and injustice on people. And I think that's a good clip to just show how it can be done. Nothing violent, nothing, no property damage, no violence, but asserting your freedom and asserting that the police have an obligation to respect you. And
and it definitely helps when you're in a group, all kind of pushing in the same direction, peaceful, nonviolent, civil disobedience. That's simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, I want to go into the wins and then not the losses, but the kind of ongoing loose ends. If I'm not mistaken, throughout your convoy charges, this was one of the wins you said, right? Where there was a constitutional W in terms of thanks to your sort of pushback in the courts, they were able to determine that some of the lockdown measures were unconstitutional.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't get very many, and even the ones we got, could have been bigger, but we did get a couple, and that was one where the prohibition on all outdoor gatherings was 0. So that's it was a long battle. That we didn't win that case finally until I think it was April of 2025, so just a year ago. 4 years, 4 years after the event.
And when it comes to like the implications of the win, like, when we tally up, like, let's just say like, a pandemic happens tomorrow and like they try to impose the same rules. Like, what are we looking at in terms of, safeguards that we've created or safeguards that are not there? I know this could go into like a big whole discussion, but still not nearly where we need to be, but there's still some cases pending. Of course, there's the big case pending where the government's appealing the Mosley decision and the enactment of the Emergency Act. So that's that will be an important one. But
But it's not only the wins, but it's also like in this case with the lockdowns, this was the first time any court in our country ruled on peaceful assembly, if you can believe it. Since the charter was enacted in 1982, there had been charter challenges on freedom of expression, freedom of religion, worship, all kinds of freedoms. But never had the courts ever considered how to protect freedom of assembly. So now we have a body of law that is starting to be established about the importance of peaceful assembly and how the courts need to ensure that assembly is permitted. Because during COVID, without getting too deep in the weeds, but what the governments and the courts were initially saying was, well, you can assemble on Zoom and on social media, and that's good enough. And and that was one of the strong messages in the case was no, we need to be in the public square. We need to be out in the open where others can see us, hear us, and visualize the opposition to the law, and a Zoom call just doesn't.
Yeah, all of you cretins can stay in your basement. Go protest in a deep, dark hole somewhere. That's where we want you to protest. Congregate in your deep, dark holes.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So we do have some added protections, but not as much as we'd like to have. And I think this is going to be just a continue. There will have to be more of these cases and more examples of Canadians willing to stand up and assert their freedom of assembly as well as freedom of speech for the courts and the politicians and the government to take notice.
Yeah, and I'm not a big legal guy. I'm still trying to piece how all this stuff works. Something that I found very confusing, and maybe you could try to simplify it for the layman's out there. I never really understood because I did this documentary kind of interviewing yourself, interviewing Henry Hildebrandt, and the Henry Hildebrandt interview, he's like, hey, look, I found the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Hey, look, I found the Bill of Rights. And they're like, no, it doesn't apply during COVID. And it's like, how does that work where there's like laws that somehow are able to be laid upon somebody that supersedes the charter, that supersedes the Bill of Rights? Like, how does, and then it's like, oh, well, you can still do a charter challenge, or like why do these not, how does it get trumped, I guess is what I'm asking. How does the charter get trumped? How does the Bill of Rights get trumped like that?
So nothing trumps the charter in law other than the rules that are derived to interpret it, right? If that sort of makes sense. So, like one of the cases, one of the key underlying elements of the charter is that we have these freedoms of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but they can be impugned upon, they can be infringed, but in what is demonstrably fair in a free and democratic society. So, that's where the court comes in, is what determines what is demonstrably fair. And then we have all these case laws that
a demonstrably fair infringement on the charter rights.
Yeah.
And that's the actual legalese.
That's the actual wording, So the charter allows for it to be infringed.
That was a fair breaking of the rules.
Yeah.
Fair break.
It really has made the charter just about empty and just about hollow.
Do constitutional lawyers? Because I'm guessing there was a legal precedent where they're like, okay, sometimes you can fairly break the charter. Like, was there a specific case that happened in Canadian history that like allowed this to start happening? Where okay, I guess we can kind of break the rules in the charter if it's fair.
Yeah. So one of the milestone cases in there is what's called the Oakes case, and it's often referred to now as the Oakes test. how does the court determine what is demonstrably fair? Uh, did the government do everything necessary to ameliorate the infringement? Did they create other means or mechanisms to mitigate the infringement? So that's the Oakes test, and But I think I'll just take a step back and nobody's going to learn all the law in 1 or 2 sessions. Like people go to law school for 6 years, Greg, and then there's still years and decades of learning the law and practicing and experiencing it. So don't expect to know everything about the law in a couple of podcasts or anything. But here's a subset to that. So the Bill of Rights is a federal statute that only applies to federal legislation. So, and I'm speaking in very general, broad terms. It applies to all Canadians, but it's an act created by the Parliament of Canada, so it cannot be applied to provincial jurisdictions. And things like like what we saw during COVID, the ability to regulate property and to regulate business hours and whatnot, that is a provincial jurisdiction, so the federal Bill of Rights can apply to it.
Gotcha.
So it's, anyway, that's just a very, very brief snippet of.
Yeah. I want to get into C9 in a minute, but let's get to the latest with this. In summary, I think when it comes to your ongoing charges, it's gone from what I would call a kind of politically trumped up charge for being seen as some sort of leader or outspoken former politician who was part of the trucker convoy in 2022, where we'll play the clip in a second here, but essentially at one point you moved a railing a couple feet, and they said that you assaulted 2 police officers. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, it was on the steps to going up to Parliament Hill, wintry, snowy day during Freedom Convoy, and they were hurting and making a choke point, and I moved a barricade to alleviate that choke point, and as a result, the Ottawa police determined that was both an assault on the peace officers and an obstruction of the peace officers. Should we we'll put it up on screen for people to take a look at the great assault on Parliament Hill.
Trigger warning, there's a lot of extreme violence here, a lot of hatred in this clip. If you want to just put it full screen too and play it.
Let's see if we can do that.
Let's go!
Let's go!
There's moving the barricade.
Wow. Oh my gosh, the humanity. Oh my goodness. Those police officers still have
and you
not.
can see there, there Max being burned. He was there. There was a bunch of people there. We were going on to the hill, and
For those wondering,
anyway.
the police officers are still in therapy. They're still recovering from the trauma that you caused them.
The trauma, yes. Anyway, that is that was the motivation to lay charges against me. Of course, that was back in March of 2022. The charges were laid against me. They put me on bail conditions where I wasn't allowed to speak about the Freedom Convoy, wasn't allowed to post about it, wasn't allowed to chat with dangerous potential felons such as yourself and many others that happened to be in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy. I was prevented and prohibited from going to Ottawa in case I may move another barricade or something. $35,000 surety. There was all kinds of restrictions placed on me, and which, as a member of the provincial parliament at the time, and as a 63-year-old man who has never been charged with any criminal offense in my life, I thought it was a bit of a stretch. But fast forward that, I ended up representing myself because the cost of the legal fees was just outrageous and not, I couldn't sustain the legal costs, so I started representing myself. Finally, in September of 2024, we argued that the prosecution had taken too long, had again violated my constitutional right to access to justice and a speedy trial as defined by the Jordan's test, which said that a person in my situation being charged in Superior Court must have their prosecution done within 30 months. And at that time,
for those, so essentially, if something hasn't gone to court in a long enough time, then they just throw it out. Is essentially
well, you have to make an application and say to the trial judge, this has gone on too long. This is why it's gone on too long, and it is not the result of the defense screwing around,
right?
Because if the defense is just jerking around and screwing around, then that doesn't count to the Jordan time clock.
Yeah, and this is definitely a pattern with the other charges in and around the convoy, where essentially, if it's a politically trumped up charge, it's typically dragged out, pushed down, kicking the can down the road, because it makes sense, because for the public relations, for the crown, for the government, for this authoritarian crackdown, pretty well what it was, the more time that goes by, the more people forget. More people forget what happened. Yeah. More people forget how egregious it was. And at this point, like especially if you talk to a normie, they're like, "Oh, COVID, that was like so long ago. Like, who cares?" And it's like there's people who are still being dragged through the courts to this day, actually. Yeah. So yeah.
So anyway, we won that Jordan application. The trial judge said, "Yes, Mr. Hillier, the Crown has taken too long." There was the Crown had argued two key elements. One of the big delays, there was an 8-month delay in getting video from Parliament Hill, and the Crown said, "Well, that's really shouldn't count in the Jordan time clock. It doesn't matter if we drag our feet, blah 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 blah." And then there was another.
Why wouldn't that count?
Oh, they were saying because it was that I still could have set a trial date without knowing what the evidence was against me, and right. It was bizarre. Anyway, the Court of Appeals upheld that 8-month delay on getting me the video evidence was a Crown delay. It was not a defense delay. But then there was another 4-month period of time where the Crown had the judge had summarily dismissed my change of venue application, which was an error in law. You have to hear the motion before you dismiss, and he dismissed it without hearing it. 2 days later, he realized, this was Justice Phillips in Ottawa, he realized that he had screwed up, and vacated his decision, and the process started to go up again. But now this was the end of April of 2023, and the next court date that we could get was in September. So that was, May, June, July, August, 4-month delay. All because, two reasons. Justice Phillips screwed up. And then the courts, every summer, it happens every year, if you can believe it, people go on holidays, judges go on holidays, lawyers go on holidays, crown attorneys go on holidays, the court clerks and staff go on holidays, and there's not as many court dates available in the summertime. So it was delayed till September. And at the trial, Judge Wright said, yeah, that is not a defense delay, that's a crown delay. But on appeal, the Court of Appeal said, no, that's not really a crown delay, and it's not really a defense delay. It's an exceptional delay. And so we'll remove those 4 months out of the Jordan timeframe. And there you are, Mr. Hillier. When we deduct that, your trial would have taken place in 28 months and so many days, and you're under the Jordan threshold. And so back to court you go, and the Jordan clock restarts at 30 months again.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a legal term for this. I believe it's called being dicked around. Is that am I getting that right? Is that the right term? But no, but seriously, like who are we kidding here in terms of this? Well, it's an exceptional delay. Has that ever even been used before?
They have. The Crown is. Listen, the Crown didn't just fall off the turnip truck. They have been very skilled and experienced at dicking people around for a long time, and they're. As much as you might dislike them, and as much as we might recognize that they lack integrity, they're still integrity. Yeah, they're still capable people. And they were able to convince the Court of Appeals that yes, this was an exceptional delay.
It's interesting you say that they are very capable people. Yeah. There also seems to be a lot of capability with certain judges and certain systems when it comes to like keeping violent immigrants in the country, for example. Right? Like there seems to be an incredible competence for punishing people like yourself, and then also trying to give a leg up to people who have been violent or been, other types of people.
So here I would say that listen, everybody in whether they're Crown attorneys or judges, they've all gone through the academic left-wing woke academic regimen for a number of years, and then they've worked in the bureaucracy of the legal machine for ages. And most, if not many, if not most judges are former Crown attorneys. So there's going to be some affinity, some collegial affinity with their former colleagues, as well as they want to advance up the hierarchy of the legal system to get to a bigger, more recognizable and more wealthy throne, to move from the courts of justice to the Superior Court, to the appeals court, to the federal court, to the Supreme Court. So you're going to want to make sure that the people who make the political appointments see you as a shining example of their similar world views. Right?
And when push comes to shove, what do you think is driving this bias? Let's just get right down to it. Do you think it's financial incentives? Like, where are the financial incentives coming from? Who enforces it? Who's
it's
behind the
huge.
curtain, Randy?
Well, it's just like people want anybody who's ambitious wants to advance up the bureaucratic hierarchy. The money is good. A justice of the peace at the low end of the scale is going to make 150 grand a year. Um, um, a judge on the Superior Court is on the Superior Court, not the Supreme Court, is going to be making 400 grand a year, plus the perks. Judges, as you advance up the ladder, you get a lot of perks as well. So, so there's, if you're anywhat ambitious, you're going to make sure that your political masters recognize the quality and the similarity of your views with your political people making the appointments. So I don't think there's anything much more nefarious than that, Greg. It's just how people naturally tend to behave.
Yeah. I think that's a good sort of answer, especially for people who are like, it's a conspiracy, it's a this, it's a that. And it's like, well, I think it's just various levels of incentives, various sort of,
Sure.
people want to avoid the stick. They want to go after the carrot. And like you said, if they're ambitious, they want to move up, and they see this sort of bias that has kind of overwhelmed all of our institutions. And, advancing their career might be the kind of priority, whereas like actually having integrity and, upholding justice in Canada and being honorable, that's sort of like the window dressing that we put around
I'll make the comparison with the general brass in our military, who are all absolutely left-wing woke tards as well.
Hey, Randy, only fascists want to keep tampons out of the men's bathrooms. Only a fascist would say something like that, sir.
So, that's the way a bureaucracy operates. In the old days, we used to call it the Peter principle about following upwards. But that's the incentives are not for people with integrity to advance, and it's the same in politics. It's the same in the military. It's the same in most large bureaucratic organizations.
I mean, that's interesting because it's almost like a warped version of how loyalty is the most important thing, but like the loyalty for country and nation has kind of been replaced with like loyalty to me or like whoever's in charge or like whatever the playbook is, or does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think there's, you see that, I would say it's loyalty to the power that can advance your interest or that can improve your interests. So if you're a conservative backbencher, the power that can advance your interests are in the leader's office and in the lobbyist's office, and you do the things that will make the leader's office and the lobbyist happy with you.
I'm just picturing like leveling with the bureaucrat who has some form of influence and power on a specific policy and saying, hey, this is going to be so good for the nation. It's going to be so good for the Canadian people. You got to listen to me. And then they just turn to you and say, what does that have to do with me maximizing my pension? Get out of my office.
Yeah.
This is about my pension, okay? I don't care. I mean, I don't want to be that cynical, but it's certainly...
It's a little bit more nuanced and sophisticated than that, Greg. But let's say you're not going to do things that are going to jeopardize your advancement. So you go along with the stupid things because you don't want to jeopardize those incentives.
Sure. But at the same time, think about how easy that is to control people. You get a group email of your whole team in, Department XYZ in the government, and you send out an email that says, by the way, if you don't get vaccinated and if you have these ideas, oh my God, are you going to be in trouble? And then you get the email and you're like, oh, Oh, I got the email. You see the email chain? Yeah.
Yeah.
Better
Listen,
shut up about that.
our society operates the way it's incented to operate. Right? This is no big strange or odd thing, Greg. Uh, we power structures, institutions, industries, everything. Everybody knows what motivates people or what can motivate people, and they design an incentive package to get people to do what they want them to do. So but yeah, as you just
Check.
said, look at the House of Commons. How is it that you can get 150 people all to say the exact same thing on a bill? Without any deviation. As long as they're on the blue team, and you can get 200 on the red team to say the exact same thing because they're incented to do so, right? And it's not any different than in the courts. But anyway, going back, so now the appeal court has thrown out my Jordan. I've got to go back, restart the process, and I'm still looking at a few of the options available, whether I seek leave to appeal to the Supreme Court to overturn the appeals court decision, or whether we go back into trial, or there's a few different options up my sleeve, but all of them will be costly, and once again, I'll be representing myself because.
Where do people support you?
They can go on nomorlockdowns.ca. There is a fundraising page there, and it also allows for e-transfers, or it has my mailing address as well. It's www.nomorlockdowns.ca, and
Nice.
you can help out there if you like.
Yeah. So to summarize, what was once a trumped-up political charge just kind of turned into this sort of cat and mouse back and forth, trying to get you on a technicality. Now you're trying to get them on a technicality, and now it has like nothing to do with anything to do with this alleged assault. Although I got to say, I understand why you want to completely avoid the trial. It'd be expensive, take longer. But it would be pretty funny to see them try and say, "Hey, you assaulted a police officer."
No, I haven't discounted that. But here's, as we have seen, Greg, every case in Ottawa that was found not guilty or ended up in acquittal during the from Freedom Convoy related charges have all been appealed as well. So the big names like Leach and Barber. And now they have legal representation that's paid for them. I don't. But
wait, no one like JCCF is representing you, or
no, they've turned down my any interest in representing me, Greg. So
sorry to hear that. That's too bad. You're one of the. Have you not been behaving yourself on the timeline or something? What's going on? Why wouldn't they represent good old Randy Hillier? Come on.
Well, they have represented me in the past, during the COVID charges. So I thank them for that. I think some of my views on the Iran war and some of my views on the political system, the JCCF is a charitable organization. It operates by attracting funds to them.
They're adjacent to the Conservative Party and all their interests, probably.
Yeah, so there would be a lot of conservatives and other demographics that would be large donors and contributors to the JCCF who may find my views on some subjects to be less than desirable or not consistent with their views. And I think, they would.
You could say that you might be part of a fringe minority to hold unacceptable views, one might say.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, there's a lot of people that dislike my view on the wars in the Middle East, and so so anyway, I think that's in large part they didn't want to jeopardize their fundraising abilities and their donor class. We saw something like that with Charlie Kirk down at TPUSA in the States last year as well, where there was a kerfluffle about Charlie losing donors if he had people like Tucker Carlson on his stage. That would be a no-no because Tucker had some disagreeable views to some of the demographics of the donor class to the TPUSA.
Interesting. Talking about people who are critical of Israel, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
That's well, that was certainly the case in Charlie Kirk's and Tucker Carlson's.
Yeah, and I always hesitate to talk about this topic because it is, I've said it's always the biggest minefield in politics to talk about, how, yes, people care about racism, but if you start to talk about, something that could be considered anti-Semitic, then everybody freaks out and it's this huge hot potato of an issue. But for somebody who has been following kind of like free speech trends across the Western world, there's a common trend. There's a common thread here across the Western world, which is, anti-Semitism laws always seems to be the first shoe to drop. I recently interviewed.
You froze up on me, but
see, there you go.
So I think, Greg, you froze up on me, but listen,
what's the last thing you heard me say?
This blends in well with like what we're seeing with C9, where freedom of speech is we've somehow, like, I always understood one of the big values of freedom of speech is the freedom to be critical, because I know we've always known that if you want to improve yourself or improve the organization that you belong to or improve your country, you must be able to offer objective criticism of it. And now we're seeing like you can't be critical of Israel's policies because that makes you an anti-Semite. You can't be critical of Pierre Poilievre's policies, or that makes you a Carney lover. You can't be the critical of Carney's policies, that makes you a conservative lover. And
if you're a leftist, you can't be critical of gender ideology, or else that makes you a fascist. There's all sorts of versions of this.
Yeah. There's no criticism is now equated with hate speech, largely. And I think C9 takes that ever closer to that marker where any and every possible criticism will be considered hateful and therefore criminal.
No, I've been doing a lot of research on it, and my interpretation of C9 is that this is really the regime or the liberal government kind of thumping its chest to actually enforce existing laws more aggressively. In the criminal code 319, 319, it's been on the books for over 50 years, which is kind of wild because some of its language is like really kind of like modern day in terms of being kind of like, newspeaky a little bit. But it's really concerning because I think they're kind of just like adding a few things in there to really kind of solidify or kind of bolster existing hate speech laws that rarely get used. But they're really kind of like, aside from the actual legislation they want to pass, it seems to be like this is really being promoted a lot in the news and like all these politicians and everything. And what I think the Conservative Party is largely missing, yes, the religious exemption is egregious and very bad. However, they're not focusing at all on the sort of like, potential for it to be abused in various ways. No one talks about the symbols thing very much. I only saw Elizabeth May bring up the whole part on intimidation, which is like a whole new thing that they've added in here that is probably the most broadly worded. And actually, we can connect this back to what you said earlier about freedom of assembly. This would be the most kind of like huge wrench into the wheel spoke of, freedom of assembly in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Have you read this part of the bill on intimidation, Randy?
No, not on the intimidation. I was focused more on, I was looking at it more on how it was going to apply to members of parliament and members of the legislature, and how it would be really detrimental and revoke that long held parliamentary privilege of being able to speak freely and inquire about anything in our parliaments. And so that's where my focus was looking at it, as well as some of the things like the symbols and and even like this idea that an expression of detestation
or vilification
is now hateful. Like, there are many people who do many things in our world that I do detest, and that I do vilify. And when we hear of somebody engaging in child sex trafficking and pedophilia, that I find should be vilified. It should be detested. I think when a genocide happens and war crimes happen, we should be able to express our detest and vilify those who are engaged in those activities. So, it is really, but I'll tell you this, for 15 years I sat in Parliament in the Ontario legislature, and everybody is of the belief that everybody who is enforcing these laws are people of high moral character and integrity, instead of that recognizing that there's a whole bunch of people that enforce our laws who are assholes. Just like everything in life, there's police officers that are assholes. There's bureaucrats that are assholes.
There's teachers that are assholes. There's taxi drivers that are assholes. There's welders that are assholes. There's governors that are assholes. Premiers.
So you should never empower assholes with authority, right? And that is what this is doing. They've broadened out the law to criminalize what is normal expression, vilifying and detesting. And I think, and again, and we've seen it. We're seeing it every day, especially we've seen it in BC with the native question out there, and the can't find any graves, but don't say that. That's you could be vilifying natives if you call out the very fact that there are no unmarked graves ever found. And it's the same thing in Israel. You can be seen to be vilifying the people of a state if you're critical of what the state is doing with regards to process engaging in warfare. This is not good. I think people should be. It has passed the Commons, but there is room for people to engage with the Senate now. And I think let's not, just because it's passed the Commons, it has to focus the attention on the Senate right now. But I think people should continue to push heavily on the Conservatives and I think there might even be some avenue now with the NDP with Avi Lewis possibly, um, um, because he has some fringe views as well. He's a Jewish person who is not a Zionist, so he might be someone that can marshal up a few NDP people now as well. So and even if nothing else, at some point in time, the Liberals will be gone, and there should be pressure on the MPs that if they ever have the opportunity, that they repeal this C9 provisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I love all that you're saying. My head's been in this all week, over a week. And I'm actually working on a mini doc, 10, 12-minute piece for senators to watch along with the public, but really making the case of like, this is what's wrong with this bill. I can go into a few arguments if you want to get your feedback on it.
Sure.
So the one thing that, not that you're missing, but the one kind of like legal technicality when it comes to vilification and detestation is it doesn't say that you can't vilify and detest a person or an individual, but it's an identifiable group. Bling. Which is a definition, if I'm not mistaken, that's like over 50 years old. This definition of identifiable group is over 50 years old. Sexual identity, gender, race, religion, nationality, also disability is in there, I think. But, one of my arguments is going to be, I'm an unvaccinated. I might not say it this way. I might not be so personal with it talking to a senator, but I'll say, hey, here's a front page of the Toronto Star that says, I don't care if the unvaccinated die. Here's a clip of Justin Trudeau saying, do we tolerate these people? Here's a few other examples of clearly the Canadian establishment and government detesting and vilifying unvaccinated Canadians, along with the people who are protesting for bodily autonomy. They would actually not fall under this because they're not part of an identifiable group with this definition. And then like bringing up other examples like how much people hate Donald Trump or how often people kind of call an average conservative a fascist and be like, we are in such a polarized political world right now. Are you actually going to use this 50-year-old definition and say that you're seriously trying to stop all hate? Like it's very laughable. You guys are using an ancient definition that clearly does not apply to the modern era. At the very least, there should be political views in there. And there's actually an example of a Muslim imam, which many are saying this is what kind of like thrust forth this legislation, the urgency around it to begin with. There was an imam in Montreal that said something like pretty out there, which is like, we need God to like smite the enemies of Palestine and like something like Zionists. But apparently 319 was not applied against this imam because a Zionist also is not part of an identifiable group. It's more of a political ideology. So
yes, but that's when you break out, but then if you break that out and segment it and say it's not really Zionist, that's a proxy, it's a dog whistle for being a religious group. And there's like, don't, and the same goes for Muslims as well. Like some, on the other side, somebody can make the argument that you're dog whistling and you're not really just targeting that person for their political views, but you're casting shade and aspersions and vilifying the group that he belongs with, which is a Muslim group, or that that the person belongs to a homosexual group or whatever it is.
Right. Hey, don't get me wrong, Randy. I think this is all a cover. If it actually is passed, it's going to be used to be persecuting straight, white, Christian nationalists. I think those are going to be on the top of the list in terms of how they actually use it against. But I still think it's worth kind of giving them the good faith explanation of like how this definition is like super. Do you not think that's a good argument to like say this is a really old definition that doesn't apply to the politically
But I think
polarized.
but the other thing I would say is, that no piece of legislation is fixed in time forever. It always gets amended, just as we amended 319 today or this year. And they will open that door up as well, whether it's next year or whatever. That door will be opened up in a broader category of identifiable groups will be included in it. Other than, the white Christian nationalists are probably never going to get into that group, but everybody else, yeah. you know. So like it isn't also it isn't just identifiable groups. It's also, isn't there a part of it as well about and I forget how it's worded now, but with messaging and products of and symbols of
The symbols, yeah.
known, bad
So
boy groups.
if you're on the terrorist entity list,
Yeah.
and any symbol principally associated with or like is known to resemble a symbol associated with, simply the crime is displaying. If you display the symbol.
Yeah.
And I think the implications of this are totally nuts. I think the easiest thing to point to from probably our audience is, let's say there's a government protest. Let's say this bill's in effect. C9's in effect. You can criminalize symbol. Any symbol just is like a lightning bolt, lightning rod of criminality. Let's say there's this really popular protest, grassroots protest movement that's opposing some policy with the government. And then boom, somebody shows up day one with a Nazi flag. So does that mean the entire protest movement is now criminal? Just the person holding the flag is now criminal? Does that characterize everybody in the crowd? Because that happened at the convoy when the very first day, they weren't talking about the many different groups of people who were at the convoy on the news. They talked about this Nazi flag that showed up randomly in one tiny little corner. A lot of people have a theory that it might have been planted there, part of a photo op that all the media ran with. But you can already see how even having this law in the books would be a great blessing for those in power or for another political faction who wants to screw over another political movement to kind of undermine everything.
Open for abuse, but also, it's also not that there was a specific logo for the Freedom Convoy, but let's just say there was a specific identifiable symbol, logo, flag for the Freedom Convoy.
There's one.
Well,
Jerry can.
The Jerry, once that activity is recognized as a terrorist activity, then those symbols are included. Overnight,
and, boom, a symbol
these are orders in council. They're executive. In the States they would call them executive orders. Here we call them orders in council, but it's the same thing. It's just the Prime Minister,
public safety minister, and then I think it's public safety minister and one other person need to sign a document, and then boom, and then they need to have reasonable grounds to believe that the group has helped a terrorist group or they might commit terrorism. But reasonable grounds, I don't know how broad that is, but
we saw that again. We saw that during the Freedom Convoy and the. Trudeau said he had reasonable grounds, and the public safety minister said they had reasonable grounds. Now, Mosley came back and said, no, you didn't. But the damage was already done. And it took, 2 years for the Mosley decision to come out after the Freedom Convoy, I believe, to say, no, public safety minister, and no, Justin Trudeau, you were unlawful in your actions. So, you don't. That's a big time frame to.
What consequences did they have to face for that? By the way, nothing, right?
Nothing. No.
Those are the consequences.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah. It's
Very cool.
Yeah, there's, again, our system was based originally on the idea that, we all shared a universal moral standard, that people were of high moral character. There was moral integrity. Like that's what our system is designed to function on. It doesn't function well when there is no moral standard, and when there is no moral character, and when there is no integrity. We either change the system, recognizing that all we're ever going to have is scoundrels in there, or we reinvigorate and restore a universal moral standard.
I think that's a big part of it. I think, people like to talk policy. They like to talk ideology. But the more I tumble down the rabbit hole of politics, it's like so much of it has to do with the psychology of people. And a huge part of that is like you said, what is their morality? Do they go to church? Are they good people? Like what drives them to do the right thing? Nothing. Then it's
I have to. So the other day we saw a number of conservatives hold the Bible when they voted on C9. And
when's the last time you heard them talk about the Bible, right? Is that where you're going with that?
Well, I just thought to myself, Greg, I wonder when the last time any one of them broke the commandment of thou shalt not bear false witness. Or when was the last time they didn't break thou shalt not commit adultery? Or, go through the list. And have they ever upheld any of those commandments? And I I dislike when things are used as props, and I'm not, I don't know, but I know in politics it's very seldom that you uphold the commandment not to bear false witness. Among many others. So,
yeah. Here are just a few from Proverbs. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. A false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will perish. I was thinking of conservative MPs when reading this. I'm reading Proverbs right now. Oh, here we go. This is the best one. Proverbs 11:3. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. So anyway, I do think that people, we went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I do think people need to vocalize and be public and express their expectations. And because otherwise the MPs are just go about doing what they're doing. We have to. That's our obligation, is to be critical of the people who represent us.
Yeah, and I've been making a big effort to try to because I, having lived through the convoy and being put on a list of your bail list of people you can't talk to, and see what happened to all the convoy characters, whether it's Tamara Litch, Chris Barber, Jeremy McKenzie, Arthur, the Coots Four, seeing all this up close and personal, I don't want to make a sound, calm argument. I just want to shout and be like, it's a regime. It's not a government. They're corrupt. They just want to throw the dissidents in jail. That's all it is. But, I need to calm down and breathe and be like, okay, I'm not going to win that many people over by freaking out and screaming at them. I need to kind of make a sound argument and da. But, but for people who are close to the convoy, it's we kind of already know what's up. We haven't forgotten what happened. we have seen example after example of the government or regime say, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Like for you example, they're like, okay, this guy was some sort of convoy leader. He used to be a politician not long ago. We got to punish him. What are we going to do? We'll say he assaulted police officers and then drag him through court for 4 years. And then they just keep dragging him back and dragging him back. And like, that's just one example. Another one that I like is you got Artur Pawlowski, who gave a sermon at a protest encouraging people to stand the line with his words. And he got pinned with like this Alberta provincial law having to do with like destroying infrastructure. It's like literally designed for like a terrorism, basically. Yeah. Meanwhile, you had eco-terrorists like attack like an oil thing around the same time as the convoy that like didn't even get covered.
There was a pipeline sabotage during that.
Yeah. So it's like obvious for people like us who see all these different things going on.
But well, you know, one of the things that I find, this is a little bit off topic, but I'm going to say it, like one of the things that strikes me as very perplexing is, you know, for everybody convoy related, everybody no more lockdown related, everybody who saw that the jab was a danger, you know, and we're talking millions and millions of people, right? Still, a minority, but still many millions. And they know that our government was lying to them about everything about COVID. When they were being told that you can't go out and get sunshine, that's dangerous, or be with your mom or dad, or you
have to wear a mask when you walk in the restaurant. Then once you get to the table, you can take the mask off. Understand?
Yeah. So, but there's an incredible number of these people who must think that this was the only time ever that a government lied to them, and this is really perplexing to me, Greg. Like how anybody doesn't realize that governments always lie. They either lie outrightly or they lie through omission, but they are always bearing false witness. Never is it fully the God's honest truth. Like it's just, and I don't know why so many Canadians believe that this time around, they're going to be truthful. They're telling me, they're being honest with me this time. It's unlike every other time.
I think that, I don't know if I've shared this theory with you before, but I think there's possibly credibility to it. I think this is something unique about Canada. We are a younger, more naive nation historically. We didn't really have our like dealing with the tyrant phase necessarily. Like usually there's been parts of history where there's been moments, but the current generation, I was actually my own mom who said like, Greg, we didn't even have to like deal with the Vietnam thing. Yeah. Like we didn't even have to deal with that like crisis as a Canadian boomer here in Canada. And, like we haven't really matured in that way. I think like the kind of the trials and tribulations we're dealing with right now, I do think it is really like a testing, especially with the mass immigration and everything else going on. Like this really is like a testing ground, and we're going to see what Canada is made of. We're either going to be like overrun and get conquered by like globalism, or our character is going to be refined and we're going to push back and we're going to really see what Canada is made of.
Well, that's interesting because just to give you the example, I was a big supporter of Donald Trump, and really
was.
Absolutely it was.
Yeah.
And I thought
that's very important now. That's very important these days. You still are? You were?
Yeah. Sorry. Listen, I was pleasantly surprised, and I was confident at the beginning and then he followed through. He went after the DEI. He went after the deep state agendas of SOGI, ESG. He went after the deep state with Doge. He was well on his way doing everything that he said he was going to do until he ran into the roadblock of who's Epstein and no more wars. But
the Epstein switch up was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was it was like, bro, in 2016, your base was so activated, draining the swamp, talking about all that Q stuff, and it's like, now you don't care about Epstein. It's like, what?
But you see the difference. Like, I was just looking at some of the numbers. Like, the Trump's disapproval ratings are in the toilet. Like his polling numbers are dropping faster than the bombs in Iran these days. Like, he's down to like 20 points. But we see here in Canada far less volatility in our electorate.
Volatility. Can you be more specific?
Well, we are accepting of the dishonesty and the lies far more accepting of dishonesty and lies, and we're not going to punish the prime minister for telling one or two lies or three or four lies,
or wearing blackface or whatever.
If they go really a little bit too far, like the ad scam scandal or something like that, then maybe we'll get wrinkled and riled.
I think there is a significant difference there, where Americans treat their politics more like a sport, and they are like an active participant in democracy. Yeah. They vote, they do the exit poll, they get their button, I voted. And maybe it's a small difference, but I think it manifests in a much bigger way, whereas Canadians are passive spectators. And they're like, well, I'm on the blue team, and I'm just watching, and I'm cheering for the blue team. And it's like, well, the blue team screwed you over. They're lying to you. Yeah, but I'm part of the blue team. And it's like, okay, but like, they hate you.
Because even when I am critical of Trump these days, the great, like on Twitter or X or whatever these days, the greatest numbers of people, accounts who are outraged at my criticism of Trump are Canadians. Like, which, like, there's the Canadian Trump supporter. He's going to be as loyal till the end of time. Just as they will be loyal to Carney or whoever.
I have a story on that I got to share. I'm not going to say who it was, but they've been a supporter of mine. Like, I'm friends with the person. We talk about politics. They're a little bit older. And, I'm part of Dominion Society, and we did this demonstration outside of the Conservative Party convention where we had a picture of Polyev in a turban, and we said, conserve what? And like, we're kind of like poking fun at them and being like, hey, like, maybe you should pander to like heritage Canadians and not people who wear turbans. Just a thought, maybe push back more against immigration. Just a thought. It's pretty popular with real conservatives. Anyway, this friend of mine is like, he goes from saying like, well, what, you want Carney to win? You want Carney to win? You want Carney to win? And it's like, we're doing an iron sharpens iron mentality, okay, to try and improve the Conservative Party by, dragging them in the right direction. I'm explaining this. And then in the same breath, he goes, well, I like Trump and I think he should bomb Iran and wipe more of those Muslims out. And I'm just like, whoa. So I'm like, you're going to accept like the pussified, totally passive, totally safe, weak, flaccid Polyev. And then they're going to be like, rattling the saber for Trump because he's blowing up Muslims. Like, I'm like, how does that even work? I was like so flabbergasted by this. But
well, that's, you brought that up, and I that's one of my pet peeves, Greg, is, and it's mostly on the conservative side, mostly on the blue team here, that that are more likely to applaud for wars in the Middle East. It's mostly on the blue team that you'll get the people liking the bombing of Iran and destroying Lebanon and Gaza. And I say to them, like, so, and this is pretty obvious. These things have consequences here at home, big consequences. The price on fuel has gone up 50 cents in the last 4 weeks in Perth, Ontario. And the price of oil has gone up worldwide from $63 to, 100, 105, 110. It's a little bit volatile right now. But
that was because of Carney, though. Carney did that.
Well, listen, we've got high taxes. No question about it. And it was April Fool's Day, and we got another new carbon tax today. But the bulk of the increase in the prices has been from the war. And, I know many farmers, the cost and the availability of fertilizers has gone through the roof, and it's also getting scarce. So they're going to have trouble getting crops in the ground, and it's going to be a lot more costly. Diesel, like I fill up on diesel, it's $2.30 a liter here now. But also, as southern Lebanon is being destroyed, Beirut is being destroyed, Syria is running into big problems as well, and of course Iran, and that ultimately leads to greater refugees and greater immigration here, and so these same people who are applauding the war are also very likely to be absolutely opposed to immigration and refugees. They want that shut down. It is astonishing to me that there are so many Canadians who can't see beyond that first order. They see the bombs dropping, they like the bombs dropping, but they can't see the connection to the price at the pumps and more immigration and more refugees coming into our country.
And I would go one step further because, there's a lot of Jewish, like the Jewish community. Some of them support Bibi Netanyahu, some of them don't. But I made a video, I think it was weeks after October 7th of this like terror attack where like the Palestinians like went into Israel and, so aggressively, everyone's like, yes, like, let's get into Palestine and get some revenge or whatever. And they're like, look at all these protests. Look at all these angry Muslims. Look at all these angry anti-Semites. Like, we got to stop this. And we're also going to support Bibi blowing more Muslims up. And I'm like, don't you see? In the video, I'm like, don't you see? Like, the first line of the video was, are you scared of all these angry Muslims marching in the street? Well, if you want more of that, then support Israel bombing Gaza. Yeah. Because it's going to create a whole bunch of refugees and they're going to come to a neighborhood near you. And that's not a lie. That's not an exaggeration. In some cases, you can even get the Israeli officials saying, we're going to send them to Canada. They'll deal with it. And it's like,
and of course, one of the most striking examples of that is members of the Jewish community who are, let's say, oftentimes more likely to dislike Muslims or be fearful of radical Muslims or whatever, who are so very supportive of continuing to bomb them in their home countries without realizing, you're bringing them here. So maybe we want to just let them live over in their home countries. Let them keep their homes, let them earn a living, and not bomb the hell out of them.
Do you ever have a situation, I'm sure you've had these conversations where you'll meet an antagonistic blue team guy and they're like, Randy, you're crazy. The RGC is out of control. Like, Hezbollah, and like they'll list off all the things. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, we need to do something about these terrorists. Like how do you respond to that?
Well, listen, listen, I understand there's conflicts in the world, but I think, we don't want to bring those conflicts here, or we shouldn't amplify the likelihood of bringing those conflicts here. We should rather keep them far away. But I can't begin to tell you how many people, Greg, have told, you know, every Muslim's a danger. Okay, every Muslim is radical. They want to. In my experiences, in 68 years, I've met many Muslims. I've never felt threatened. None of them have ever acted any violent or untoward way to me. I get my hair cut at a Muslim barber. Because there's only a Muslim barber in Perth anymore. He doesn't scalp my head, and he doesn't cut my throat. And everything is so. My experience.
You tried to steal a barber lollipop, and then he cut your hand off.
It's sort of like, these people are. It's sort of like during COVID when we were told reject the evidence. Even though nobody was seeing anybody dying in the streets, there was no dead corpse on the streets of Perth or Ottawa, people dying from COVID. But we were told COVID is deadly, and look at these videos of these Chinese falling dead and that's what's coming here. But our own observations, our own experience said, well, that's not true. It wasn't true. And I think that in large part, this heightened anxiety and hatred towards Muslim, I think, is very much overstated. That's not to say that there aren't some bad ones. I think there's some bad ones, but I can tell you, I would be a little bit angry and a little bit upset if somebody bombed my house repeatedly and killed my family and stole my land. And I might get a little radical too.
You might hold a grudge, eh? If that were to happen. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, so I'll share a quick story on that because I do think it's a really interesting topic. Like when I first got into politics, I was very much, oh my God, spooky Muslim. I remember watching the video from way back. Faith Goldie did this video on the Danforth shooter. And how his brother or whoever was going to this extremist mosque and blah, blah, blah. And at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm very afraid of the spooky Muslims. And these days I kind of just think of it all as the multiculturalism. I don't think, like you said, there's definitely more extremists for sure. There's definitely people who are more militant for sure. But I kind of just chalk them up as another Khalistan now. I'm like, okay, so there's the Khalistan people doing their extreme thing. There's the Muslims doing their extreme thing. But to me, it's not necessarily unique. They uniquely don't like Israel. I'll say that. They definitely have a very specific where they're directing their ire. That's definitely unique. But I guess I do agree with what you're saying because I started to see it as I feel like the sort of they try to whip up all this hatred towards Muslims, and it's this isn't really to help Canadians, though. This is to kind of support a foreign agenda. I've started to see that, and I'm sure. I kind of support Canada. I support Canadians, and I actually oppose all immigration. I'm not going to just pick on this one group. Sure, they're extremists and they hate that group, but
listen, I think that you draw out a good point here. Is that's my view, that's my experience. That's my observations. Now, if I was a Jewish person living in downtown Toronto, I might have a different set of experiences and observations, and therefore different conclusions. But regardless, I would still not want to bomb them over in the Middle East and bring them here, right? And so that's the
I feel like that's not a one-to-one comparison though, because if you are Jewish and you're Randy Silverberg, like, would your home be Canada, or would you see Israel as more of your home? In which case, you know what I mean? Like, like that's the interesting thing about Jewish people is like sometimes they don't see their home, like they see Israel as their homeland, even though they live in Canada or they live in America. So it is this weird sort of thing, just to kind of, not to get too deep into it.
Between are you a Zionist? Are you not a Zionist? There's a bunch of different and I'm not well suited to speak on those things, but I'm just like you. I think we have had way too much immigration, period. Over an extended period of time, and that door should be closed shut completely, and also encourage other countries not to bomb and kill and destroy other countries, and incent people to leave.
I mean, it's simple. I remember being really, I didn't want to pay attention to like whatever the Jewish lobby or the Israeli lobby in politics. I never really paid too much attention to that. But then after October 7th, I was saying things like, yeah, can you guys just get along and stop killing each other? And then I would kind of get construed as like being indoctrinated or like siding with the terrorists. And I'm like, you lost me. You lost me on that one. Okay. And then like when you keep pressing against a person like that, it becomes like, you don't give a fuck about what I think as a Canadian at all, do you? Like, it's you really don't give a shit. You only care about your thing. Okay. Well, wow. All right. Well, that's out there. That's good. That's good information to know. So this whole conservative, principled Western values, that was just a skin suit, right? And then now you're just totally tribal for your team. Okay. All right. Game on. Got it. But did you want to get into anything else before we wrap it up, Mr. Hillier?
I think we've covered a good chunk of territory, and we probably have gotten ourselves in enough trouble as it is. We should save some trouble for the next round.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. If you want to help support Randy Hillier in his next legal phase of what he's doing, it's nomorlockdowns.ca. nomorlockdowns.ca. Fantastic. Well, we'll keep cheering you on. Is there a sort of next, do you have a week, a month?
I'm going to be putting out some notes. I think I'm going to come down on a decision next week on what path I'm going to go forward on. But again, it's one of those things I don't like, as I described, like dealing with the Crown. This is like you're in a poker game, and the guy you're playing against is the dealer, and he has an endless pot. And if he can't beat you with the cards, then he's just going to ante you out of the game. And so I don't want to show any cards yet until I'm ready. But I think probably next week I'll be making an announcement on where I go next in the never-ending prosecution of the great assault on Parliament Hill.
Yes, absolutely. I like that analogy. It's like your short stack at the poker table, and it's like, am I going to go all in this round, next hand? Am I going to get a better hand coming up? Yeah. I'll just go all in now. Let's go for it. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again for watching, everybody. And there is going to be a mini documentary for C9 coming out. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Should be really good. There's going to be clips from the full-length documentary, but it's going to be designed for the Senate. And
have you released your free speech documentary for people to get?
Not yet. No, not the. So
when are you going to do that?
I'm really happy with the first cut, but the final cut needs to be improved to kind of like reach out the echo chamber more. So I've pivoted for the C9 thing to make this mini doc, because there's a lot of other things I'm going to create from this documentary, like, talking about academic freedom and all sorts of other topics. But I figured C9 is a kind of a good place to start, get something out there. It'll be a good teaser for some of the interview clips from the documentary. But definitely, end of the spring, summer, I'm hoping to get the full length documentary out. But yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I hope the audience and everybody enjoyed the evening, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. All righty then. See you next time, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.